Hi, Carl. Hi, Bentley.
Hi. Sorry, computer trouble.
Hi, Joel. Okay, 4 of us. Wow.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Sleepy and busy, but that's okay. It's happening.
Yeah.
I guess we should make a round. I've been mostly busy. There's a conference I'm preparing for, and some time with Society Library. So not much work on the CDL model, except in Society Library, we were discussing a bit some of the formal versus informal in ontology. But yeah, still, we're mostly following the debate map pattern, which I guess is public, but we started discussing about extending the debate map pattern, I guess. I don't know how much of that is public, but yeah, the debate map is public, so that's good.
What's the debate map pattern?
The debate map is the work of Stephen Wickland, alias Venrix. It's an open source project, and his pattern is he materializes arguments. So the notion is there's a claim, there's another claim, and if you say that this claim is a pro or con to the other claim, that's an argument, and it's kind of materialized link between two claims. And then you can argue for or against that argument, and that is a relevance claim about the argument. So, and we've been discussing, is that too rigid? And certainly there are, if you're thinking progressive formalization, you need to go a bit broader than that. Certainly there's things that are relevant to a claim without yet being part of an argument. So we're extending in that direction, like general relevance, like keep that in mind. But
question. Sorry. What's the distinction between an argument and a claim? It sounds like there's a
in that model, absolutely. In that model, the argument is really the link between two claims. If I say A makes B more believable, that is the argument. It's the link between A and B that is the argument. A and B are claims, you know. Okay. But the fact that A is relevant to B and makes it more believable, you know, that it is a pro or it is a con to B. That is the argument, and it's a materialized link.
So if I understand correctly, you guys are building off of debate map, but you don't want to discuss the specifics of what you want to extend it with because it's part of library's work.
There's some stuff that is part of Society's library secret sauce, yes, but I think we're talking in generic enough terms that it's not an issue. Like, they're not always following the pattern because there is such a thing as general relevance. General relevance is obviously a generic concept. So that's something that's absolutely fine to discuss here, because that will find its way into debate map.
I mean, obviously, you are more than empowered. You know, my opinion doesn't matter. You're more than empowered to like do what you guys need to do. But I will say that, like, to the degree that you or other members are here to sort of, and this is, I know it's not really, I don't think this is your modus operandi. I imagine that there's other members of Society Library who are sort of like asking you to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
To the degree that you're here to sort of like, you know, talk, but like, oh, but I can't discuss what I actually work on because it's secret. I will say that it makes me feel like there's just less motivation to be present here. I mean, like, what's the point?
I understand totally. I don't think, okay.
I'm trying not to be confrontational, but I'm trying to be
no,
authentic.
I think it's perfectly legit and authentic to say that. I will say, I honestly think that there's nothing I'm hiding which is germane to the conversation. We're trying to model arguments, and we're trying to have a good generic model for, and I think, like, society library has its own way to model arguments, and we're trying to understand it, and we're trying to see what fits and what doesn't fit. And I'm talking about anything that's about the general modeling of arguments, because
what
that's
are
something we all share.
I think you mentioned that like there's some things you want to add to the relevance, or there's some things which are not fully part of the argument, but that are germane to the argument. I think that's close to your words. Are you at liberty to discuss like what
I'm saying in general, and this is not specific, it's a generic claim. I'm saying in general, it makes sense when talking about a claim to speak about other claims that are relevant to the claim without being part of an argument in that claim.
Mhm.
That's argument structure.
That's just like if you could reuse a claim for other arguments kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a grab bag of relevant arguments.
Right.
And I'm saying that's one way that we think will expand the debate map structure. So that's public.
I thought you could already in the debate map reuse claims across different.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. The thing is, you'd have to look for it, right? If you have, you'd have to look. Okay, for example, the claim can be totally elsewhere in the debate map. The claim can be part of an argument, and then you could want to reuse against that claim. Like there's a claim, there's arguments for or against that claim, and then there's other claims in there. Of course, you may want to reuse one of those claims in another argument. For example, in a multi-premise argument, which is a part of the debate map model, you can say there's an argument that depends on more than one claim that is pro or con the root claim. But also you can have an argument like, this is something, keep that in mind, which is relevant to that claim. And you don't know if it's going to be a pro, a con, or anything. It may be an element of context. Mm-hmm. And that is a valid relationship. This is what we're introducing now or thinking of introducing now in debate map, because we realize not everything falls in arguments. And I think that's generic. How do we model the links between arguments? And it's totally germane here, and definitely not something that should be private or secret.
So I mean, it sounds like that. I forget that guy's name. Tolman, the warrants.
Yes, Warren Toulmin, Toulmin. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'm pronouncing it French-wise because that's how I read it. Toulmin, probably.
That's the way I hear it from our rhetoric professor.
Toulmin, yeah. Warren.
So is that the kind of thing you're talking about, or are you guys exploring something different from warrants?
I don't think we are not using Toulmin's model, and I would love to. I really like Toulmin's model, or rather, I like Walton's models more, which I think are richer. But the general idea of Toulmin is perfectly useful and appropriate. But no, when I'm speaking about context, it's not even a warrant, because a warrant is part of an argument. It's and it could be part of the prose of the argument. You could say, this is germane to that, this is relevant because, and that could be a warrant. Like if I wanted to put a Toulmin warrant in the debate map model, I would use it as a pro to the argument, to the materialized link, argument link.
But
which makes yeah.
But there are some things that you know or that you imagine are relevant for an argument. You just don't know, like if it's support or not. It's information.
It's context. It's information.
Right.
And keep in mind that. And for example, here's all the data we have about that fact.
Mm-hmm. Almost like you could even put like a specific study as like evidence, but you don't know what the conclusion to make from the study is or something.
Or there's multiple conclusions. It supports multiple conclusions, which may be contradictory. Like the story has not resolved whether it's interesting because it's resolved a certain number of things, but it has not resolved a particular thing, or it gives, again, interpretative context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And this, did you say this is something that's in Walton's? Do you say Walton was the name of another model that you liked better?
I'm no, this is just something we're finding in usage.
Okay.
It's we have stuff that doesn't fit in the argument pure. This is an argument and this is a model. So that's
All right.
practice. And it's about the whole progressive formalization. This is a specific form of it, right? It's sometimes we have stuff we want to put there before we know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're building these fine logical models, it's asking everybody to enter stuff that fits the model has its limits. That's findings from practice. And I'm sure you've been through that, finding stuff. Where do I put this?
Yeah, definitely.
And
yeah, I was just gonna say that it does seem like the type of thing that, like, in a formal setting of like conveying the specifically all the pros and cons of an argument, you wouldn't like think to put it in this formal like structure, but like practically speaking, it definitely makes a lot of sense. Like especially if we're expecting to improve our understanding of an argument as time goes on, that like those things will eventually at some point, I'm sure, influence like another pro or con or decision or somewhere down the line.
Exactly. It's potentially relevant to this. We are not sure how yet. It's a type of relationship. But the debate map model, for me, it's very germane in that it is a specific case of, and that's totally Stephen Vicklin's invention. It's a specific case where all edges are materialized. And not all edges, that's the point, only certain edges. The argument edges are materialized.
When you say materialized, you just mean like visible, present?
They're treated like a node, which means I can point to them.
Oh, right.
The usual. But not all edges are materialized. That's interesting. He chooses selectively to make claim-to-claim relationship. But for example, question to claim is not materialized, which I think it should.
Interesting. And claim to claim would be argument?
Yes.
Like the edge represents an argument. Okay.
Yes. And it's materialized because you can argue pro or against the argument being valid.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's the relevance link. So that's the basic debate map model, which I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, not everything fits in that. And I think I would generalize the materialization of links because, of course, the relevance can have a relevance. And that is already the case because the relevance is an argument, right?
Yeah, I actually, in my like problem-based model, I've run into many cases where like the links don't seem as, because you can like put scores on the links or on the nodes, and that also goes to the, like when you click on one, you can see the claims, which also have edges with scores on them. But I have noticed like some of the edges don't seem as like sensical or like they might make sense given some thought perspective, but just looking at it isn't always immediately clear like what the number on a certain edge might mean if the types of the nodes that are connecting aren't really I don't know, something that you would expect an edge to make sense for.
Sorry, say that again. If I'm hearing well, you're saying you find putting node type constraints or edge type constraints is problematic. Is that what you're saying?
Well, specifically, just in some edge types, it seems like the scoring an argument over it doesn't seem obvious what you're arguing over, as opposed to like if you score the node itself. So just like I think I'm kind of agreeing with Stephen's or decision to
Materialize the
sometimes
edge.
materialize, sometimes not. Not that I like, know exactly what he's materializing and not.
He's
specifically
materializing arguments. It's very clear. It's when a claim is relevant to another claim, that's itself a node.
Right. So like between a question and a claim, the edge wouldn't make sense because there's no. It's not if you're asking about a claim, maybe there's no. There's not an argument being made. So.
No, you have a question, and then basically the claim that is related to it is a position, saying, this is a possible answer to that question. And then somebody could say, no, it's not relevant to that question, or it doesn't really answer the question because. So that's why I would materialize that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Materializing edges, anything that can be said can be spoken about and problematized. And because it can be problematized, it should be materializable at the very least and possibly materialized. Right. That's my position. And we're finding examples of that. The argument, it's so tempting to do links as distinct from nodes, because that's the graph model we've all learned. And certainly Stephen's model has had to make add extra nodes everywhere, because it doesn't work that way. And I'm still saying the node link distinction is a red herring when you're dealing with language.
Right.
And there's evidence of that. But also the problem with formal concepts is learning formal concepts is hard. And that's at the database level. We're talking about if we're thinking, what are the database implications of progressive formalization? We'd want a kind of very, very flexible data model with a kind of rule-based saying, hey, this doesn't seem like it's following model A. Maybe you would want to do this, this, and that to make it follow the model. And then you could play with different models and see, but as a suggestion rather than as a data constraint. And that's how Shackle works in RDF, right? Shackle is a shape language. It gives you, it lists, you give it, here's my data, my schema, here's my data, tell me about how my data violates my schema. And then it gives you materialized violation objects that then you can look into, which again, from a progressive formalization standpoint, make a lot of sense. But this is all about how do we model arguments. Like one conversation we were having in another context, and I was making the point also with Jack and SenseCraft and Topic Quests. I think that the tree model, or even the graph model, like the tree, if you do tree model like Yalo, it's really terrible because it really encourages people to diverge and to go with this and that. To look for growing apart, if you will. With the graph, at least you can say, well, this is a combination. But when you're really doing combination, you're saying, oh, maybe if you're thinking, say, what should we do to have sustainable transportation in the city, right? Let's take that as an example. And obviously, what you're doing at some point is a model of different mixes of solutions. So each solution has pros and cons and side effects and costs and benefits and this, that, and the other. But what you're trying to build is a portfolio of solutions. And that will probably depend on some model of the city, 3D model. That is obviously not the concern of an argumentation mapping software.
Right.
On the other hand, arguing for this portfolio and against that portfolio? Maybe yes. So what I'd want at some point in the far future is to be able to say, here's all the elements of the portfolios, the pros and cons of each one. Here's the different portfolios. And what you'd want then is a matrix. Proposal A has, so many buses, so many trams, so many this, so many that. And hence the estimated cost is this, and the estimated pollution is that, and blah, blah, blah. And then another column, and then, a column per proposal. And then you can discuss, oh, I prefer this proposal to that proposal because, and then you're not making a per element, you're making a per portfolio. Or if you're doing multi-criterion, or if you're doing, there's all kinds of stuff that don't fit in the tree UX. I had some of that conversation in both society. I've been with that a lot. I mean, if you look at decision support systems, they enable multi-criterion matching, and that's a table. That's not a tree. That's not a conversation tree. And you need both. You need the at the component level, what are the pros and cons, and what's the evidence that this is the cost, and what's the evidence that blah, blah, blah. That's totally needed. Or why would we put a new line here instead of there? It's a very good example because these things are incredibly complex. Should they be necessarily, some of that is probably specialist. I was just reading a blog by an economist arguing against that being even done in public because people are crap at aggregating, which I'm not sure I agree, but he's pointing to a real problem. Let me just where is this blog? Anyway, but anyway, I'll find that reference. But on the other hand, it's something I'd like to be able to represent. But obviously, this is going to be a reference to another object. Same with climate change. Like a lot of the arguments really are about these incredibly complex models. And it's about, is this complex model taking this or that into account? And what's the value of the model if it neglects that factor? And again, it's a portfolio.
Yeah. I definitely, I'm curious what you were looking for about the discussion about like whether people can aggregate information properly. I feel like that's just like practice and or tooling improvements that are needed to be able to help people get better at being able to like think about these complex problems.
That's the Harvard column I was referring to.
I mean, I can see the oh, it's very recent. Wow. Yeah, I can see that like the perspective of like if there's a very complex topic and people aren't able to like understand it, then maybe it doesn't make sense for people to be able to like, I don't know, be the source of the decision on it. But I feel like that's more of a problem with the explanation side, helping people understand it, than it is on the like, I don't know, not letting people in on it.
So I'm curious. I mean, this is what I'm thinking about is materialize everything. B, at some point we'll have to materialize combinations and permutations of options because otherwise there's too much. That's my thinking. Well, I mean, and there's evidence in Society Library that yes, we need the links and sometimes, but sometimes we need grab bags as well. Cool, that's useful. That's evidence. I don't know what you think about the grab bag problem. Like, I think that's outside and yet not outside. We need to refer to aggregate models.
Well, personally, I guess an idea that I had thought of that I think is relevant here is like when you have various solutions that are not like where their pieces are not mutually exclusive, where you might have like proposal A that has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things it's suggesting, and then proposal B, which has the 1, 2, and 3, but then it chooses a different thing over
7.
here. That's like being able to uniquely talk about why one is a good thing, and so that that's a good thing for A and B, but then it's why 4 and 5 are not good things, so that by implication you'd see that the proposal 2 is better than
and why 1 and 5 really work better together than because sometimes you need that too.
yeah I don't know. I actually don't. I haven't envisioned how that would be best displayed in the UI. Honestly, I actually so I have like a decision matrix on my kind of like where you have solutions and then criteria in my app, and I was considering putting like components of solutions in the table as well, where like
Oh, I think that's
instead
necessary,
of just solutions in 1, 2, 3, 4, you have like, okay, a column for solution 1 and then a column for each component of it, and that would be like a grouped, like under a grouped header, and then you'd have group header for solution 2 where you have solution 2 and then its components, so you could like still argue or like say how good the solution is separately from its components in case you think a component is like missing or something.
Yeah.
And that I feel like maybe that can help with the component discussion, but I in this kind of view, this like table view, which is like currently what I'm just envisioning for a lot of things, I have no idea how you would like say, these two components particularly go together, or these two components don't, in that kind of view. I don't know.
Okay, first, I'm a big fan of tables. Of course, in many situations, we don't have enough data to fill the table, and that we have to convey somehow. We don't know how this, and is the component 1 really the same in A and B, or does it just look the same? Maybe there's variance, and this is where it gets really complicated. I don't know, and I don't have an answer there. But still, I very much saw a matrix for component portfolio and another matrix, and you could connect them actually with component portfolio outcome, multi-criterion outcome along many dimensions of evaluation. And that's another matrix. You can connect them, but ideally,
I'm trying to envision this outcome, how the outcome gets added to the matrix, like what that looks like. Do you mean like more another column within the solution portfolio of like, this is the expected outcome, and then
it could be another column, but it can be added by the end, because what's common is the portfolios. So if you put portfolios as column, you can have features as a first set of rows and criteria as a second set of rows, like.
Oh yeah, okay. Well,
simple.
I was just envisioning features and criteria, or like features being reworded in the form of a criteria, but it might, yeah, there's probably a value to separating those concepts.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. That's good.
So, I mean, obviously, you might also want to discuss how feature contribute to criteria, and then you need another. It's a cube, really. And there's ways to do cube again, but then it's less legible. And if there's combinations that have value that is greater than the sum of the part, it's probably best to materialize them. Like if there's 1 and 2 are different, we have to treat them differently than 1 or 2 because their value is very different from 1 alone or 2 alone. Either much better or much worse.
Right.
And mutual exclusion is another story.
Mhm.
You have to do dynamic tables at some point. You can't show it all in a static document. Like, for example, if you have mutually exclusive things, then you could have when you click on a row, then this row got excluded by your choice.
Yeah, definitely having a dynamic thing seems like it would help a lot with being able
But
to understand.
this is highly problem specific. This is not, I don't think this is generic argumentation software. Now, in the case, maybe it's however, it's some of it is generic decision support software, like decision support software, which costs a fortune, tries to do that. Like, what are the different, and this is where it's interesting to see how it interacts with all the Bayesian evaluation and what's the likelihood of this impacting that and blah, blah, blah. Because it's not just straight like cost you can just add up because you kind of expect to know. But when you're speaking about risk and risk factors, then you always have to look at interrelations between risks, and you may not know, right? There's too many combinations and they've not all been calculated. And you have to also, Mark, we don't know this.
Right.
These are big problems. Now, in an argumentation frame and perspective, Bentley's left, and it's too bad because I think this is a good UX conversation. In an argumentation frame, I think it's still relevant to have all the whys of why we think this element is good, why we think this combination is good, why we think, and this is the argumentation part. And I still want to be able to have argumentation also about why we think feature 1 and 2 really combine really well. That means I need to materialize the combination.
Right.
Carl, you're writing.
I was kind of working as I was trying to like sort of follow along as I was updating these tests.
Multitasking. I don't know. I hope I answered you well about your concern. I'm really trying to make sure that we can discuss anything that's generic and germane to everybody.
I agree, and I feel bad putting you on the spot because I know that you're very much like a proponent of openness. I just, if I hadn't said anything, I would have been like, "Geez, Carl, like you're kind of
No. It's a legit concern.
Yeah, I really think that honestly, if it's okay for me to have just spoken my mind, and I do find your response reasonable, let's just keep it as going. I agree. This is an interesting conversation. I don't have a Well, actually, that's not totally true. I was about to say I don't have a lot to contribute. I'm still a little hesitant to contribute because not with you, but any sense of, maybe this is a personal hang up, but like any sense of like, hey, I'm a member of this group, and sorry, I don't want to signal you out because I know this is not really sort of like your MO, but if there any sense of like sort of, I'm here to be part of this group, but I am not really going to share, my details. It just makes me uncomfortable because I'm sort of an oversharer. And then,
So am
I
I.
don't know, I just feel like anyway, so that all said, my contribution would be that in the back of my head, as you guys have been talking about tables, I've been thinking about dialogue and trying to like take dialogue and turn it into, and I don't mean like LLM dialogue because it's, well, that might be the right approach now that LLMs are so good, but more like in there's this, like we're basically this reply method. And I think it's counter justifications. Like some people are saying, yeah, that's, so that may be the case, but this defeats that. And I feel like that turn taking, that sort of back and forth, could be summarized into context. Like rather than following the chain down the conversation, because not everyone wants to see the conversation, or maybe they do, because some people learn best that way. But there probably are ways to pick out, like, oh, this particular, warrant, or this particular claim, or this particular whatever is frequently useful to people who follow the chain. So let's add it as context up top, so that people don't necessarily have to follow the chain. And I experienced this in Reddit. If you're a Redditor, or if you're in any forum that allows threaded responses, sometimes interesting things occur, like 3-4 replies down the chain, but most people don't see it because it's hidden, and it's tedious to follow chains, especially if there's like many different trees. But if a system could surface those, that might be beneficial.
Absolutely. No, this is fun. Go on.
I was just going to say that I feel like that's it would require an example for me to see, but my impression is, like, in that case, like, the people in the thread should be like able to extract that information and like adjust. I don't know if I forget how Jew works, if it's based around like a formal set of like pros and cons or something, but like I feel like you should be able to extract from the children deep threading out and put it into like manually. Like someone should be able to say like, oh yeah, this was an important point, and just put it at the top, like, level thing.
This is what we did in Idealoom, right? Being able to say this is, but we have in Idealoom, we have two independent things. We have the conversation, and we have the extracted ideas, which have their own structure, which is not we have fully threaded conversations. And what do we extract out of that? And I believe still in that approach, but it's a lot of maintenance. Are people willing to do that? Yeah, well, basically we had paid curators, and that's what Society Library does, is paid curators to create the structure on the site. And I think that's right. I mean, I often have these arguments about we need to be able to crowdsource this. And Jamie's like, no, I only trust my people who have learned the methodology. And I understand why. Crowdsourced curation often yields something without unity. On the other hand, small group curation has its own bias, and you're missing out something. So this I'm very much looking for the magic formula between, and with a lot of Reddit and Slashdot and all these moderation systems try to do is make sure that a good reply 5 levels deep gets upvoted enough that it gets shown and unfiltered, and you get the thread up to that one, which I don't think is the best solution long term, because yeah, you still kind of have to read the thread, and not everybody wants to take the time to read the thread. And that's why I believe there should be 2 presentations. Like, here's the top emergent context and or argument, if it forms an argument, structure, and the conversation structure. And I'm even saying, and that's really me, it's the conversation structure is up to a point an artifact, a time-dependent artifact. What's important is the causal structure. Like, I'm thinking that doing this would lead to that, which would lead to that, which would lead to that, which is bad or good or both. But it's, for me, easier to argue from the causal tree than from the argument, because the argument goes back and forth in time, right? Oh, we should do this because it'll lead to that. Oh, how do we know that? Oh, because of that past experience. So we're going back and forth in time in the conversation. And if you keep that, it's harder to read than if you say, this is past evidence, this is future projection, and this is expectations. And these are and then there's a kind of other layer, which is, why do we believe that? And there's other layer, which is categories and distinctions. And that's why I want to tease those out, because I think they scale better. There's infinitely many arguments, but not that many, infinitely many possible futures that are believed significantly by enough people. Of course, there's infinitely many futures, but if we're not in the multiverse, Marvel multiverse world, I mean, we can have a exhaustive list of convincing futures, or close enough to exhaustive, plausible at least, and then we can discuss. And again, there'll be, but that's me, and there I'm not mainstream in this community. A lot of people are thinking from the argument structure, because that's what we used to think. It's normal. We don't think in causal trees. On the other hand, I think we should learn to. That's my slightly unusual position in this.
I personally am a fan of the idea of like when you start out with a thread and you get like a gem from it, then if it can get extracted to this the argument structure somehow efficiently, then like if you had like a version history, you could see like where this argument came from, and that would link to the thread that resulted in the arguments.
Well, I have all that in IdeaLoom. Not many adopters. Now, to
Pretty
be
good.
honest, I didn't market it hard enough, but it's there, and you should look at it if you're interested in getting that.
Yeah, I should look at it a little closer, I think.
Because this is exactly what I do in IdeaLoom. It's say, here's a threaded conversation, classic threaded web forum, and then pick a bit of text and put it in an argument tree. It's just a tree.
Sorry, is IdeaLoom the tool that we were looking at most recently? What's the name of that methodology with the
IBIS?
Yeah,
No.
is it the IBIS-based system, or it's a different one?
IdeaLoom has a kind of weak IBIS implementation as part of it. But
do you mean the gamified one? We were talking about a gamified, like
no, yeah, that's SenseCraft.
SenseCraft, right?
No, IdeaLoom is my first effort in collective intelligence. Let me reshare screen. You'll probably recognize it. We won't spend forever on it. Does that ring a bell?
This doesn't ring a bell to me. I mean, maybe like a year ago. I mean, how recently do we look at this?
I don't know. It's been a while.
How do what's the best way to get started? I see the using IdeaLoom says work with conversants. Is that the best like deployed platform? You can sign in or something, or how does it work?
Yeah, okay. So this is the demo where I explained why IdeaLoom up to a point, and it shows a lot of the mechanisms. And
how do I get to the demo if I want to like click through and see?
This is the
demo.idealoom.
Yeah, demo.idealoom.org. You have the and about IdeaLoom. You have the do you have the link?
About IdeaLoom, yes.
You have my screen. Okay. So if you look, the way this works, so there's the whole conversation, okay, all messages. And forget those at the top really, because they're a bit weird. But this is a fake conversation. I was just trying to show something. That's a sandbox. That means you can do whatever you want to it, and it will reset every night. So feel free to answer, play. It's fine. So, and the idea is, if I take something and I say, okay, this is interesting, because ideas have a life of their own, and I say this goes under disregarding dissent. So I'm creating a new idea. And that whole thread, those 41 messages in that thread are now associated with this through this extract. See, because it's now an extract, show an original context. Actually, I need to unlock. That's a bit of not obvious, but okay, now this this thing is part of this thing. And now each of these, like this, has been associated with that idea. So this is the argument tree, if you will. And I did add little IBIS, those are tags really, but question, proposal, con, argument. It's a tree, it's not a graph. Well, it's a graph backend, but the front end, it's a tree, unfortunately. It's, and you can have, and this is many to many in the sense that some of the ideas are connected to multiple points in the conversation. Now, the conversation, unfortunately, has a single root, which is not representative, because what we'd want normally is for each that's not what I want.
Can I slow you down for a second?
Yeah.
What is each box? So like there it says Salviati, why Idealum, and there's a paragraph of text. What do you call that?
That's a post.
Okay. So each post lives in a tree, and
Yeah,
can each
that's
post?
that's a web forum. You can reply. This is free text.
Just like
Okay,
threads.
and can posts be shared? But well, what are the things on the left? Each node in the like directory tree on the left.
That's the we call it the idea tree. That's the formal, the more formal analysis of what came in the conversation.
Okay, and each node there is called an idea.
I call them idea. That's the vocabulary we used, but yeah, sure.
That's fine. I'm just trying to understand which word I should use. Okay, so each idea contains a tree of posts, right?
There's a many-to-many relationship between ideas and branches in the conversation.
So any branch, any post, that's like a particular part of the branch could technically be associated with any idea.
Correct.
Okay, that's complicated, but sounds flexible. Yeah.
That's the point. Yes. The idea is a message, a post could theoretically talk about many things. So you take many different, like this one, I took 2 different passages. I took 2 extracts out of it. These are the extracts. Okay. And so for each, does that have no extract in this one? Yeah, this has 2 extracts. So there's this extracts. I'll never be done hearing frivolous objections, which is here. So this bit of text was taken as an extract and associated with this one. I could associate it with another idea. An extract is also many-to-many with an idea. And here's another extract from another message.
Wait, let me slow you down again. Now the right-hand side, that's like the idea info pane, like the right-hand third of the screen. Okay,
Yeah,
and when you're looking at that, you can find extracts from the current ideas posts.
This is the extracts that were associated with this idea, the currently selected idea. And they can come from many different posts.
So they didn't even have to come from a post appearing in that idea.
No, they appear in that idea necessarily. When you associate the extract with the idea, it makes the post be part of that idea.
Okay.
So like the posts, well, okay, correct me if I'm understanding this wrong, but the posts are like independent from the ideas, but you can connect, like they're like an idea is not like a set of, you wouldn't have a bunch of discussion within an idea. They're just referencing posts.
You could, but yeah, you don't have to. See, okay, on this, the post, like really, this was first created to help somebody who wanted to make a kind of synthesis from actually listserv online conversations. So there's actually a connector. I can connect Idealum to IMAP mailbox or to our RSS feed. So you could have a listserv conversation, just make sure that the conversation, like this Idealum conversation has an email address. Just make sure that it's in CC on the listserv. And then all the messages in the listserv will appear here. All the emails will appear here. And then somebody who wants to make a synthesis will just go, oh yeah, look, this was said in an email, it's important, I'll make it an idea and I'll drag it in the tree and I'll make sure that the idea, and then when you have,
slow down with this part, because I want to, so you selected text and you said, make it an idea. How do you
Yeah.
make an excerpt an idea?
okay, you can either make it an idea is a bit of a misnomer, but the idea is I can take an excerpt and just add it to an existing idea, so it becomes another excerpt in the
Okay,
idea.
that's what I thought. You associate it with an existing idea, right?
Yeah, but you can also, I can also take it and say, oh, make it a sub part of this idea, and I've just taken the text of the excerpt and I've made it an idea, which has this excerpt, which is equivalent, and then I can change.
Oh, hold on now, before you. Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, so the one thing I was about to ask is, so right now we're looking just at that idea.
Yes.
Some of the numbers are very big, but we're seeing, well, actually, you just refreshed the page, so I got confused because the middle pane didn't change. It was showing the previous.
It did
thread.
change. It was showing the previous thread. Now it isn't. Like this.
Yeah. Well, oh, did you do something? Did you refresh the page, or was that automatic?
It's automatic.
Okay. Okay. I follow. Yeah. Because this is now the only post associated with this idea. It's the excerpt that you just made a new idea out of.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So I made it a new idea, and I can too many messages. And now I've changed, and I can have a description, and actually and then this can be full text. And then I'm explaining what the idea means and why and blah, blah, blah. And the excerpt is immutable because it comes from the post, but the idea description can change.
Now, what's the idea type left to right? Includes, becomes, or goes to, what's that?
Well, right now, chaos is not specified, right? So chaos is actually. So
what do you mean it's not specified? Oh, it doesn't have a type.
It's untyped. It's untyped.
Okay.
So some ideas are typed, like this is an argument.
Mhm.
Chaos is actually from an argument. It's it should be includes argument. So this is actually an argument. Oh, but it doesn't have a type because, and too many messages probably includes argument, and it won't have a tag because whatever. So this is.
Sorry, you lost me there. What does it mean? Includes arrow argument.
Includes is the link type, and argument is the node type.
Can you click the drop down again?
This is not the best case. Let me show you.
Oh, I think what you're saying is, okay, those are like synonyms. Like if it's making proposals, if it's an argument against, it's an argument, right? Or
no. These are different possible types. Like for example, above we have an idea, a proposal, sorry, principles for wisdom of crowd. That's a proposal.
Okay, yeah.
So from a proposal, I could have an argument for, an argument against, a relevant issue. I can create a new issue under it, a relevant criterion, because I have the notion of criterion in here, a new issue that questions the proposal, which is a bit different. So these are and includes is a bit of a grab bag. The proposal could have a sub-proposal, and
so those are the valid relationships between risks and its parent, principles for wisdom of crowds. Okay.
Yes. And this, by the way, is data. It's not code. There's actually a JSON format for how you specify the ontology you want in a given conversation. So if you don't like IBIS and you want a different way to do this.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
But I don't want us to focus on that. Let's just look at the logic of, so we're taking posts from wherever, and I said I can put it to RSS, I can put it to emails, I should put it to web pages, but I haven't done that. I have a connection to hypothesis, but the hypothesis links don't come as links, they come as a kind of grab bag extracts. So I can have extracts in an idea that come from web pages instead of posts. That's not perfectly thought out.
That's not fully thought out.
I'm not happy with it yet.
Because what I like about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
They should be both posts and extracts. Like basically when I have a hypothesis, I should have a post saying, hey, so-and-so thought that this was an important citation from this web page. So it becomes both a post and a thesis. But I haven't done that. The one reason
My
being,
thesis, that's an idea type.
sorry, not thesis, sorry, post and
Excerpt.
an excerpt, yes, and an extract, yes.
Extract. A post and an extract. How can something be both? Will be two separate entities, or it's a single thing that's both?
I would have had to do a post containing an extract, and I don't have that yet, and that's why I didn't do it. Right now, I just have, when I import from hypothesis, I just have the extract, because making the nested extract in post was something I wasn't ready to do yet.
See, because this is kind of an area where I'm starting to look at is these, highlights of things. Like I'm trying to make it so I can highlight something on a URL, bring it into Howju, associate it with proposition, like this is what I say is appearing there, and then do argumentation about it. Is it true? Is it false?
Yeah.
That's
It makes perfect
interesting,
sense. It makes, yeah.
I mean, it seems.
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, it seems like the pane on the left, the pane on the left and the right could be like part of a browser extension that appears like around your middle screen, being like an article or something. And
Absolutely.
you could do a similar thing.
Hmm.
Like that. I don't know. But
Go ahead.
God, sorry. I really like this idea. I feel like I'm curious to think about or ponder, like right now it seems to make like the thread the primary, or like the primary source of it seems like a first-class citizen in this kind of
Yes.
view. And then like the ideas, you said they're like graphical backend, but I definitely am a fan of like doing something like this with the like problem mapping kind of, spatial or
As I said, the fact that there's an IBIS thing is absolutely optional. If you can live within a tree, we could totally have problem, solution, component as types, as node types. Would that answer your? I don't think so.
Well, I don't think the tree, because I'm using
No.
a graph where can have problems associated with many solutions and vice versa.
Yeah. And for that, I need to rewrite the UX, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it could even just be like the graph thing inserted on the left here. I don't know.
What I'm really happy with, I know it adds complexity, but the many-to-many nature of this, I think, is extremely important. It's made to, like, there's a lot of not obvious, but there's a lot of work that's not obvious but really valuable. Like right now, it's a bit of a mess because, as I said, the conversation is almost a single thread. So you don't see, but what this can do if you have many extracts connected to something is it's possible to bring together, like there is an example with group thing. Yeah, group, this one has two. So it would be in theory possible to bring together two dissociated threads, and then in the participants of the ideas, you'd like, hey, you people should be talking because you've been on separate threads about the same topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the number of total and unread messages in this thread, and the unread doesn't auto-update, which is ridiculous, but you should see there's a lot of weird logic so that if I declare something read, all those numbers should automatically adjust. Like there's a lot of numbers that should adjust at once, and don't seem to be so much. I'm actually a bit surprised. Something's wrong here. That used to work well. I need to see why. Because the point again is that if the message is in 20 places, then it's read or unread in 20 places. Really annoyed it doesn't work because tons of work on that. There's also, when we associate a message we assume to an idea, we assume that the whole thread is associated to an idea because we're probably still talking about the same thing, but there's actually a sophisticated mechanism. So you can say, okay, we stopped talking about this from this point on. So there's thread breaking, right? So we can say this is not part of this thread, of this idea. I just don't have didn't add that button yet, but the backend can do it. But then maybe a subthread below it belongs to it, and that's fine. It'll be part of it. That's all
I'm curious.
handled.
I'm curious about like composing posts, composing posts basically. And I was gonna say using extracts, but I think because that's really the way to compose posts. Like, let's say I'm reading one post and one idea, and I'm like, oh, that proves this. And I'm reading, and let's say I bookmark it. I don't think bookmarking is a feature, but let's just say I bookmark it just so I can find it easier later. And I'm reading another post, and I see something. I'm like, oh, combined to that other post, these two together prove this. How do I compose two other posts that other people have done the work, basically to argue something or prove something into a new conclusion?
Very good question. I don't have that, but I have something that I think is important that I didn't get to show yet. Synthesis. The whole point was to help people write overviews of long, complicated listserv conversations.
I kind of missed how we got to this UI. How did you get to the synthesis thing?
Add a new panel group, add panes, blah, blah, blah. We have all these, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a very rich piece of software. Who came?
Okay, so you added a pane, and how did you get it to be a synthesis pane?
I asked for to add a new panel group, and there's many groups, and one of them is create a synthesis.
Okay, gotcha.
And I can have many panes so that I can look at the conversation from many angles, because again, the idea is I'm organizing information. But let's look at this. So here, this is kind of just the titles, and there should be the descriptions, but most of the descriptions are empty, unfortunately. But this is checked. It's a kind of subtree. It doesn't even have to be contiguous. I can say,
kind of a view on top of those.
Yeah, it's a view of, it's a subview of the tree. So you can create listen, this is what we've been talking about recently. We should focus on this in the next month. Like, the idea is for a moderator to be able to give a kind of overview for people who are not following the list exactly, but they'll get, because that's a practice we started from. That was, we had a listserv and a moderator who would trigger reactions with synthesis posts. And it worked well. Like, he found that people would not follow the list because too much to read. But when he did the synthesis, people would skim and, oh, I've got something to say about that. And it would provoke new conversation and new cycles of participation every time he posted a synthesis.
That is cool.
And so the idea is you can take this subset, you can even rephrase any of the points. So there's a kind of, we call it the long title. So there's the title in synthesis. And then when you're done, you publish it and it becomes, let me close that now. If you remember, in all messages, those are the synthesis. These are messages that are sent to people, and this is the view in the application, but it's actually an email people receive with outline structure, and they can click on any of them, go back to Idealoom and say, oh, what's being said about this?
That's the thing you told us to ignore in the beginning because you didn't want to introduce the idea yet. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So this was something, if I understand correctly, you weren't super interested in argumentation modeling in this point. This was more of like well, I don't know the right word, but like a tool for connecting dialogue or like, threaded conversations. You weren't super focused on argumentation necessarily. Is that kind of right?
That's this was a group effort. I was already interested in argumentation, but let's say others weren't.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this was the consensus view.
Yeah, I mean, you can have argumentation to some degree with the typing, I guess.
Exactly.
But yeah,
and that I introduced later after I left the team and forked.
Okay. Who's like, are there other people who are still building on top of the previous fork, or what's the fork situation?
I don't know if they're still pursuing the project. There was a lot of bad blood. They did for a while. It's called Blue Nov. Blue Nov, and the project was, the original name of the project was Assemble, no E. but I don't know if they're maintaining assemble. I think it's a bit dead now. They're still working on, oh God, this should not be. Just check.
Looks like 2 years ago was the most recent commit unassemble
Yeah, that sounds right.
on GitLab.
Where is the Luna assemble? I have it. Yeah, maybe not here. Is that the? I forget this one. Remote.
It says a lot about when they'll prefer to find out the most recent commit through the command line instead of going to the GitLab UI or the web page.
Oh my God, this is the imagination for people branch? Oh, that's old. Final update to README in 2019. Is that what you have? No, you have more recent.
Oh, they called it the final update? That's so ominous.
Oh, yeah, final update. I'm just looking on GitLab/assemble/assemble, and the develop branch has like merge branch Phoenix 400 and develop 2 years ago.
Okay, so the assemble GitLab is more recent, but not much activity since I last looked. I mean, Guillaume Garçon, Louis Larivière.
What's Phoenix?
I have no clue.
Hmm.
So Ariane's last comment, Ariane's the last person I knew in the group was in 2020. Yeah.
This has been very fun. I've enjoyed looking at Idealoom. I think I may have to poke around because I'm curious about the extract thing and I'm kind of curious about the hypothesis integration too.
Ask me if you need help installing or building.
Okay. Yeah,
Idealoom has its own repo and they've diverged a lot now. There's almost nothing. Like the one reason we disagreed and there was bad blood, they were not going to maintain the extract emergent ideas continuously. For them, the idea table was just a kind of high-level table of contents, pretty static. Phase one of discussion, five items at most. Phase two of the discussion, 5 items at most. Not going deep into the structure. It was not supposed to be emergent. And they extracted ideas into more posts. And they did everything in the posts. And it's like, no, it's the post is the raw material. And they were, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. They're a company of consultants. So they're selling their services, quite expensive, as, we'll help you do open innovation in your company, and we'll do this collective intelligent process. And that means we'll do all the ID extraction and moderation and everything for you at a high price. It's a business model. It's not a terrible one.
Maybe offline you can tell me how high, see if I can get to a different line of work.
I don't know how they manage. They sold to very expensive companies, very high-end companies. And that was the kudos to the director of the company as a seller. I disagreed with him on everything, but his ability to sell something I personally thought was not that useful, but
It's
in
amazing
French,
what some people can sell and the way they can do it. It's just some people have
yeah,
this.
it's magic. I mean, as a seller, my goodness, he was skilled. In French, we say this is someone who could sell ice cream to Inuit.
Yes, that's not just a French saying, or if it was initially, it's been co-opted by English.
Yeah. Ils vendent de la crème glacée aux Esquimaux. So it's a talent. So but the downside of that is that he was very not keen on developing the crowdsourcing aspect of that. And obviously,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
always a problem, right? If you're selling the organization and the quality of the organization, you don't want too much crowdsourcing. Which I understand, and that's a business model. It's legit in its own right, and that was not. It's my problem in that I want to develop the crowdsourcing angle, but I don't have a good business model, to be honest. Right? That's.
I mean, Stack Overflow, they do like private instances. They do private, spaces or whatever they
Hosting.
call them.
Yep.
Hosting. They host and
And-
manage the services, I think.
An open source service is a model. It can be done, but there has to be enough take up, and people have to see the value of it. And again, I think with the proper, if you integrate with decision support and blah, 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 it's possible to do, but it's upstream, it's uphill. I think we're all looking for that. I mean, Society Library is very much selling, we'll do the information organization, and that's legit again. I'm not saying that shouldn't exist. I think that I'm interested in the other part.
Right.
But what really depressed me is how they're like, oh, we can't extract too many ideas because people will get lost, and we can structure too much because people don't understand. It's like, bloody hell, these things can be learned. And the problem is, and that's not a business problem model, but it's and that's what people were willing to buy, and that's a more fundamental problem. They managed to sell one-offs. Like, we'll get everybody in your company engaged and using our tool for a short period for a special discussion on X, right? As opposed to an ongoing process of knowledge management. And this is really, and of course, if you're selling services, you cannot sell services, very high, very expensive services as an ongoing thing. You'll sell it as a one-off intensive. And it costs so many $100,000 or euros.
Okay, now how many of those can you do a year, Mark Antoine? Tell me the business model. No, I'm kidding.
They did quite a few.
Probably 3 or 4 a year.
Yeah. And they had big clients. That was in France. They had the big corporate clients. It was the banks and the railways and these kinds of clients. It's pretty amazing what contacts they had. We're all looking for that, aren't we? But selling an ongoing process is very different than selling a one-off. And I think the true value of the tool is only when you can sell an ongoing process, getting people involved. And this is why I insisted so much on importation in Idealoom, because getting people to move tools, move communities is very hard. So capture whatever's happening outside and then have someone organize it. Whether that someone is a small group or a big group, crowdsourced. But anyway, you need a kind of, if you want to crowdsource, you have to have a training period, then slowly, like I didn't show you, but Idealoom has all these permission mechanisms and different roles you can take. And if you have this role, you can do this, but not that. Because the point was to grow people into moderation capabilities and eventually have it taken over internally and charge for upgrades and charge for the classic open source business model. Charge for developing bespoke functionality, this, that, and the other, which I think is legit. But you need the tool to be taken up internally for people to develop a literacy of argument mapping.
Mhm.
And for me, that's fundamental. Otherwise, you're dealing with what people can understand from the tool, from the UX, without taking time to develop that literacy. And that's terribly limited. UX can only teach so much. So IDLoom was not developed as a tool for everybody to use as such. It was developed as a tool for the information workers within an organization or within a community, including emerging information workers, to do the organization of something that happened otherwise and present a curated synthesis on a continuous basis. That's still my goal, through other means, but that's still my goal. That's my business vision, if you will, because I think it has to be continuous.
And you would do that. You would do like an open. But you haven't figured out a business model, right?
Not as such. Well, ideally, see, I'm too busy right now trying to find the right data model.
Yeah.
I don't have. I mean, I did try to offer IdeaLoom a bit, but I'm too aware of the limitations of IdeaLoom for the business models I think about, which are more crowdsourcing based, where you need more than one view and more than one representation of the data.
Yeah, I was listening to Joe Rogan recently. It was him and Russell Brand, and they were chatting about the what's the word? The uptick or the growth of, what do you call them? I mean, I don't know how new this is. Like, to some degree, it's just, is it new? These sort of creator pundits, like Russell Brand, for example. Have you ever listened to him or seen any of his material? Yeah. So I mean, he's totally, from outside the information space. He was stand-up comic, a bit of an actor.
Oh, no, not that. No, I don't know Russell Brand. Sorry, I'm thinking of another brand. I was
okay. Who are you thinking of?
The Long Now Foundation.
Okay, well, this Russell Brand, I mean, I think you'd recognize him. He has long, curly, dark hair.
I know who you mean now. Yes.
Okay, yeah. But he has a YouTube channel, which apparently has millions of viewers, and I mean, that's his business model. And I guess I don't know how big the space is. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have a lot of Russell Brands, but there are, with Substack and with people going on Rumble, I think there is an uptick in this sort of distributed pundit space. People who they live off of people liking their informational content, and I wonder if there could be a space for a tool to support that, where not only are you giving the person a platform, it's like Substack but for more informational based, or maybe Substack plus like annotations, like where the informational content is there, but also a way to interact with their audience.
Interesting.
People pay for it. People, they pay for well, I don't know how you pay for it. I mean, maybe they pay for the subscription. No, their viewers pay them. That's right. So the people who want to support the person pay. Maybe there's upgraded features where they, I don't know, have certain levels of, I don't know how it would work, but
no, interesting.
Yeah.
Public intellectuals. Yeah. I personally think some of this should be how government does public consultations. For me, that's the ideal. Okay, the business target I had, it's not a fully fledged business model, but the business target I had is, I do overshare. It's okay. It's not important. It's the subsidiarity companies. Think somebody like United Way. United Way is an umbrella organization that has all these that is kind of exists to receive donations and distribute them to sub-organization, and also to speak on behalf of all the organizations that are part of it. Think of unions, professional orders, whatever, Chamber of Commerce. These are all organizations that speak on behalf of a large number of people.
Right.
And they have to ensure that they represent what those people really want. It's their job. And I think that making sure that they adequately represent their members' interests is something that can be sold and packaged.
Makes sense.
It's a general problem. Like subsidiarity is a generic problem.
Is it
And-
also good for politicians, or are politicians not interested in that?
Well, some are not. Let's put it this way. It's certainly what we expect of politicians. My hope is to build infrastructure for deliberative democracy.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the stepping stones to that is
Yeah.
smaller subsidiarity organizations. Could
Well,
be a
there's
housing
probably actually
co-op.
more money there. I mean, if you want to build
Yeah.
a sustainable business, there's probably a lot more of
Exactly.
those organizations. So
Yeah, but think even a housing co-op. It's like, are we? Some of things are votable, but when you're trying to get the pulse of a large number of people, and voting is once you've already decided what the issue is, but once you see what are the emerging issues, what do people care about, this is where something like that I think is extremely useful. So that's my business target.
yeah, that seems like a good idea. Challenging.
It is.
Software is fun, but also crazy and wild and frustrating because everything's basically possible. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to, yeah, it's hard.
Bentley, we haven't heard you. I don't know if you found any of this interesting, or I know you've been multitasking a lot.
He was, I don't know if you noticed, like halfway through, someone came in and came out, and that was another him. So I don't know if he's having problems
Could be.
like connecting or something.
Oh no, I was walking around doing chores around the house, so I switched to my phone.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen Idealism.
Yeah, that's not news to you.
No, but always good to see, and always learn something new. Yeah, I don't know. I've been focusing on other things right now. I'm rewriting my personal website for no apparent reason. As you do, get bored, write a website.
I should do that someday. Yes, maybe someday I'll have time.
Yeah, well, you might find this slightly interesting. So I'm porting my website into Massive Wiki, but I'm upgrading Massive Wiki to handle the pieces it doesn't have. So
interesting. Yes, that's more interesting.
Massive
Yeah.
Wiki
Massive
was that was what
Pete Kaminsky.
OGM was working on.
Yeah, Pete Kaminsky mostly in OGM. There's a Massive Wiki group of like 3 or 4 people. Yeah, the concept is that you create your own wiki using Markdown files in any editor you want, and then we have tools to help you share. Well, it's Markdown files and version control, and then you can share and collaborate is the core concept. And then we plug in a static website builder so that you can then post it to the web. And my personal website was mostly Markdown, and I was using 11D, but I wanted some features that they have a Massive Wiki. So what I did is I actually rewrote their Massive Wiki builder using 11D as the core backend.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. So now there's 2. Now there's a Python and there's a JavaScript with 11D.
I don't know if 11T. How does it compare to? Do you know Pelican? How does it compare to Pelican?
I haven't used or looked at Pelican that much. Is Pelican JavaScript or is it something else?
Python.
Oh, so this is 11D is a Node JavaScript.
Okay.
So it's I'm sure they all have a similar feature set. Just I like to keep my life in one language right now, just for simplicity.
and same for me. That's why I choose Pelican.
Yeah, that just means you can't do front-end client development.
Well, it's part of the templates, yes.
There's a lot you can't do on server side.
No. That's true. That's true. No. I also do JavaScript whenever I do front end, but whenever
Right.
I have a choice, and I think certainly static site generation, there's no fundamental reason to be one side or the other. So I'll choose my preferred language.
Well, I mean, so yeah, but
Wait,
then
what's
we
Mark
implement
Antoine's preferred language? Sorry.
Oh,
Python,
I'm a Pythonista through
Okay.
and through.
Pythonista. Yeah, so, but you know, then you have to write a search and you're like, okay, so now I got to crack open JavaScript. And
Yeah, of course.
of course you can do server-side search, but without a server,
No, we're
Um,
speaking static site generation, and yes,
yeah.
there's, but that is in the template, is what I'm saying.
Well, so the way we're doing it, way we did it to make it so that you don't have a back end, we generate an index for all the pages, and then we search it in JavaScript, and then
That sounds good.
in the UI. Yeah. So I just like keeping the one language. So
No, I understand perfectly. Listen,
Yeah.
we both want that, and we just have different
limits.
well, patterns, ingrained patterns. There was a fascinating front end search. I'm trying to remember what it is. That is it. Lurk. That is written in Rust, compiles to WebAssembly, and was supposed to be pretty efficient. Very interesting project. Try to find it.
So that'd be helpful if you get over a certain number of files.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so that's what I do have a researcher still working on heart disease and the keto diet. And we're really, I got another meeting I go to. I'll talk about that later.
Okay,
All right.
It's Stork, by the way. The project I just spoke about is Stork, if you're interested.
Okay, I'll take a look. All right, talk to you later.
I should probably run too.
Yeah. We've been at
Yeah.
it. We've been at it. Okay, then. Have fun.
Great chatting with you, and thanks for what's the word I'm looking for? Being patient with my responses or ideas.
My hope, why am I here, right? I hope we can at some point all gain from one another's work and intuitions and be stronger together than individually. And that means shared, not necessarily shared business model, actually. Those should be disjoint, but shared data model. So I still want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'll try and present Howju's model again, and you can show me where it's completely falling flat.
It's cool.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.